everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 384. Today we're going to talk about Galaxy: The Dark Ages. Now, unfortunately this game is really out of print, very hard to find, but a little spoiler, I will say I recommend do track it down if you can. It's relatively cheap and easy to come by. Now this is a remake of a game called Colossal Arena, and there was also another one, I believe, Titan Arena. It's basically one of Reiner Knizia's betting games. He released a couple of different versions of basically the same betting system that you're going to see in this game. And I actually did review Colossal Arena a few years ago now. It was one of the first reviews that I did. And I quite enjoyed that game. That one had a little bit of issue with how the game ended. There were some different kinds of end game conditions, and there was like 2 or 3 different variants that you, depending on which version you had, you ended up coming up with, and none of them really was very satisfying. The game was really, really cool until the end, and sometimes the end was okay, but then you'd get in a situation more often than you would want for it to be kind of a weird ending. So this is differently themed, of course. So for example, Colossal Arena is basically people betting on monsters to win combat and then playing spells and things that kind of influence them. This one is set in futuristic sort of sci-fi, Twilight Imperium, Eclipse kind of thing. And the players are working behind the scenes to influence the outcome, and they get 3 of the 8 systems in the universe, the galaxy, to last and then become victorious. And you're basically betting on them to come into play. Now, it's not really considered betting in this case. You have these little base tokens that you put out that exert a certain amount of influence, and they give you some victory points at the end of the game. So it is a card game, and it does play supposedly 2 to 5 players. Never play this with 2. Play it with 3 to 5. All of those player counts work just fine. But let's go ahead and jump into how it works, and then I'll tell you more what I think about it. Okay, here's everything that you get in the game. Obviously, you get the rules in the box. You get a giant stack of cards, and players will get a hand of 8 of these cards to start the game, and these are the cards that you'll be playing. There's a few different varieties of cards in that deck. Each player will get 5 bases, and these sort of cheapy kind of poker chips in their color. These don't really need to be anything fancy. So that's what you get. You get 5 in your color. There's a couple of dice for sometimes resolving combat. And then there are 8 worlds. And you can see there's actually 2 cards for each world. So as you become the governor or sort of the controller of the world, you'll get one of these to sort of remind you of an ability that you're going to get during the governor's phase. And each of these worlds or systems has a governor phase special ability. And that is quite a big part of the game, is figuring out which systems you want to back, of course, to get victory points, but also which special abilities you want to take advantage of. So how does the game work? Well, like I said, you're going to get 8 cards in your hand, and these, more often than not, are going to match the different worlds here. So you can see here is a Silor card. It's got a value 5. Here, you probably can't see it, is the Silor world there. And so you may play a card underneath here. Now the game is going to take place over 5 rounds, and so you're going to have basically 5 rows underneath here that you're filling up. So as you can see, let's say the first round we're going to be playing cards underneath the worlds here, and let's see, Filoni's over here, Falawi, Imperial. And so as these get filled in, you might also play cards on top of other cards. So each player is going to maybe play a card out here. So let's say players have taken several turns, we've got cards out on there, and then somebody goes in and puts the last card. So each of the worlds that's currently available has a card in front of them. Then we're going to take a look, and one of these worlds is going to surrender. Now that's only going to happen if clearly one of these worlds has the lowest number. In this case, Myrmidon has a 0. The rest of these are 8s and 6s and 5s and 2s and things. Now if, let's say, Falawi also had a 0 here, and then we put that there, we'd have a tie. We wouldn't have one sole loser, if you will. So we'll keep playing until there's only one card that is the lowest. Now you also have these cards here. These are ally cards, and these are effectively wild cards. So it's feasible to play these on any world. So if this had been played maybe on the following turn, then now again we have a single lowest world. This world is going to get removed, and then we're going to go to the next round after some other steps. But then we're going to play another column under here, and then another one and another one. And so you're going to play until you've got 5 rows underneath the different worlds. And this is going to take up a little bit of table space. So what we do is actually play them sideways to save a little bit of room and it works just fine. So how does the turn work, and how are you going to try to win the game now that we kind of know a little bit of what these cards are and what the worlds are? Well, on your turn you can simply play one of the cards from your hand. So you just play a card, and then if you choose, you can play one of your bases. Now let's just get rid of all these cards here. And so let's say I was on the first turn, and I go ahead and play yellow there, and then I can take my base and put it underneath any of the worlds. So maybe I play the yellow card there, and then I put my base here under green. And that means I'm betting that green is going to live throughout the game, because again, there's 8 worlds. Every round we're going to get rid of one lowest world. So let's say argue that the first round this got rid of, second, third, fourth, fifth round, these are the only 3 that are left. Those are the only 3 worlds that are going to score. So on your turn you can play a card and then optionally choose to play a base. Now the other option, instead of playing a card, is you could discard a card. So you can only discard a card if it is matching a world that was removed. So here we can see the Myrmidon, and say we were at the previous case where Myrmidon got removed. Then on future rounds, you can get rid of Myrmidon cards because they're worthless. Myrmidon's already been destroyed or removed from contention. So instead of playing a card, you could discard the card and then go on from there. Now again, you can optionally put a base out. You don't have to put a base out. The third and final thing that you could do is actually take a card, and then you can take and put it face down in front of you and then mark it with your base. And you do that instead of playing a card or discarding a card. And what you've done here is secretly marked a bet that one of the worlds will do that. And so in this case, let's say yellow is kind of doubling down on green. Now you can no longer make this secret base after we've scored that first round. So as these get put back out here, let's say, and then we're going along through here, and then we've scored, and let's say we removed Myrmidon again in this case, once that's happened, then you can no longer make that secret base bet here. You've got to do that before we've scored the first round. So moving along a little bit, what are the importance of these bases? Well, they're twofold. One, the earlier that you get a base in play, the more victory points you're going to score. So let's say green does last to the end of the game. This base here is going to score them 4 victory points. If later on, let's say another player actually had come along and they see, okay, well, yellow's back in green, so I'm going to kind of get on that gravy train there. And so in the next round, after we've already scored the first round, players will be playing cards to the second row, and then so maybe red plays the red card, and then they put a bet behind green, and then maybe the yellow player comes along here and they play a card there, and then they go ahead and decide, I'm going to put a bet here. Now when you put a bet, you have to have an available spot, and you've got to be doing it in the current round. But as you go along in the game, these bets or bases are going to be worth less points. These are only going to be worth 3 victory points. Now the one that you made a secret base is actually worth 5 victory points. So what you do at the end of the game is you total up, depending on which row is in there, and if the planet is still left, you add up whoever has the most victory points is the winner. Now on your turn, you can actually reveal your hidden base, take this card into your hand, and then you can later play it. But then you go ahead and take the chip that was on there and actually put it up here above the world. Okay, and that's actually to signify, okay, you did have a secret base there, and it's worth 5 points there. Now the other thing to note about putting the bases out, and this is a little bit more important in some ways, is once you have a base out, you also are exerting that much influence. So in this case, let's say we didn't actually reveal that, we have 4 influence from yellow on green, and then 3 influence from red on green. Now whoever has the most influence is going to take and get the world card here, and they're going to put this in front of them, and they're going to get a special power. So you can see here, if you're the governor of Divergence, may play a second ship this turn after the first ship's power is used or forfeited. So once you put a base out, you get a power right at the beginning. So that's something you might do, even though you say, well, I'm not really going to try to make this work, or you really do want to try to make it work, but there's some other things you can do, but you really like this power because that's kind of your play style. So each of the worlds has a different play style. Now, somebody else can come along and take influence and control of this from you. So right now, red has 3 influence, yellow has 4, but through movement of bases and playing cards that can move bases around or destroy bases possibly, the influence can change hands, and then this will go to somebody else. So quick recap, you can play a card and then play a base optionally. You can discard a card as long as the world's been removed and play a base. Or again, remember, you can play a secret card and then put your base on top of that. So you could do Fulani or something. Now the other thing that you're going to do after you've played or optionally played a base, is you can do any of the governor powers that you have after you've done that. So then you can, of course, play a second card. You can do all kinds of different stuff. I'll show you that here in a second. Now, when you actually play a card, all of the cards that are less than 6 have a special ability. So when you play them, you get to do a special thing. So this one is a level 1, and all the ones have the same ability. So it may draw one card at random from the hand of this world's governor, examine it, and then place it face down into the governor's reserve. There's several cards that will affect the reserve, and then that's basically a sort of set of cards that's in front of that player, sort of temporarily out of their hand. It's not a good thing in this case. So we have the number 2 card here. May reject first draw in the draw phase, and then put it at the bottom pile and draw a new hand. So after you've played your turn, played a card, done any governor abilities, you're always going to draw one card off the top of the deck, or you can pick up any cards, any and all cards that may have been in your reserve from other players kind of messing with you. So this one allows you to sort of get a redraw. Here's the number 5 card. May draw one card at random from the governor's hand and add it to your hand. That actually increases your hand size. And then the number 3 here, may improve one visible base in this world's column. The base's influence is increased by 1. So again, you can move that, you can play that, and then shift that up. And now you can share. But whenever you place a base out, there has to be empty. But after that, they can kind of be moved around and share spots. So now, red and yellow are tied. In that case, whoever was the governor keeps the governor. And then finally here we have the number 0 card. And this says may not be attacked. Well, how do attacks work? Well, let's say this was out here. Now, if you play a card that is 6 or higher, you can see these just have the name of the ship. There's no special ability. All the 10s are dreadnoughts and so on. Now, when you play a card that is 6 or higher, then you have the possibility to trigger an attack. And the way that that works is if I had played a card that's capable of attack, again 6 or higher, on top of another card in that zone. So let's say I had played this yellow card out here, then I had played the 8 on top of it, then I have triggered an attack. Now, if I had played the 8 first, there had been no other ships there, you can't trigger an attack. There has to already be a card existing there. Now, the other way that you can trigger an attack is you look and see in the current row if there's any face-up cards that equal that number. So here we have a 0, but underneath that we actually had an 8. So if we'd played this yellow card here, we get 1 attack for having a card underneath it, another attack for each 8. So in this case, we'd get 2 attacks. Now, the Imperial guys also give you another attack opportunity, so it's possible to get some more attacks by playing cards specifically there. Now, when you attack, you get to pick who you're going to attack. Now, if you attack a zone here that has a ship that's not a 0, because remember, 0s can't be attacked, you're going to take and roll a die. You get one of the dice over there. You roll it, add it to your number, in this case 8, and then the defender is going to roll a die and then add that number to their defense, and then we're going to compare who's the winner. Now, if the attacker wins, then they'll discard the ship, and any other ship that's underneath it will become the new card, the new number. So it's feasible to reduce the amount of power, of course, in a ship there. Now, if the attacker doesn't win, then the defender can attack back. So you have to be a little bit careful of that counter attack that will wipe out your ship there. And you can, if you get multiple attacks, let's say this guy here got multiple attacks, he could attack this twice if you wanted, or you can attack different ones. Now, it's also feasible if there are no ships here to attack an empty base, and that will actually reduce it down to the bottom row, and that will reduce the influence there. And they'll still roll a die though, but they don't get any counter attack. So let's take a look at the heart of the game. These are all these different special abilities. Again, whoever has the most influence with their bases is going to get the governor ability. So if you control Silor, you may discard up to 3 cards from surrendered worlds and then draw replacements, and you use that during the draw phase. So if you've got a bunch of cards that are on a dead world, you can more quickly cycle those and hopefully get to some useful cards. And then for the red world here, it says may draw 1 random card from any player, return it, or another from your hand. So you can steal a card and then give them back maybe something that's worthless. The yellow world gives you may play ships on this world face down, and then you reveal when determining world surrender. So once all the cards are filled up in that row, you can kind of surprise with that one. Now, Myrmidon may randomly draw half rounded up the hand of one player and place them in the victim's reserve. That can be pretty devastating. It kind of sets them back for a turn, because remember, they can just draw them back up at the end of their next turn. Flowey is may reclaim one visible card from the Flowey column for your hand. This increases your hand size. So remember, we're going to be playing stuff in rows here, and so you might have used the 10 or something earlier, and then now you play a card down here, and then you can pull the 10 back up into your hand for the Flowey world. Imperial is gain one automatic combat opportunity when you play a fleet ship, and so that's an additional combat to what you might have already gotten, you know, for playing on top of ships or with other matching values. The orange world may move one ally card in the current row to any other column in the current row. So again, remember the ally cards are wild, and this allows you to move them around and change up who's winning. Divergence again may play a second ship this turn. And one thing I'm pretty sure I didn't say is you actually only get to activate these when you play a card in that thing. So remember, you need to have control with influence, but then you need to also play a card on that space. So if I had the influence here on the green world, I have to go ahead and play that. You don't just automatically trigger the governor power. I think I probably insinuated that earlier. That's not true. You actually have to play a card of that. Just want to make sure that's clear, nobody gets confused. Finally, there's a handful of technology cards in the game, and you can play these at the end of your turn, and these will sit out in front of you, and then you can trigger them, and sometimes they'll just trigger them immediately, but these will disappear at the end of the round once we figure out which world is going to surrender. There's a whole variety of these things. Okay, so that is Galaxy the Dark Ages. What do I think of this? Well, I think this is probably the best version of this whole betting trilogy or system that he has. Now, this actually had some development work by Don Greenwood, who's a somewhat famous, well-regarded war game designer. So I think that they've fixed some problems with the end game. The game is a little bit more slower paced. Now in Colossal Arena, you could kind of do some deck destruction and sort of force the end of the game. You don't really have that in here, and you kind of miss it a little bit, but again, I think that really led to some wonky end games. But they kind of make up for it because the special abilities and things allow you to shift bases, and the attacking and the different world powers are slightly different. Those seem a little bit better to me. And it still retains the essence of the game. So there's really two parts to this game. One is the hand management aspect, because you don't just want to go and kind of shoot your wad with these high value cards because you don't want to use them early. You want to save it to the end when it's down to the nitty gritty, and it's down to 4 worlds, and you need yours to survive because you've got so much bases stacked them in them and all these points, and maybe you have the secret base. So you have to really manage which cards you have, and you try to kind of suck cards out of people to get them to play their big ones to save their world. At the same time, you're trying to manipulate all these different powers to maybe retrieve cards or kind of play around a little bit and do some sort of mitigation that way. So there's that aspect of it. But then there's this sort of like kind of cooperative thing, but you're not cooperating with everybody. You're only going to be cooperating with probably one other player or 2 other players in 2 different columns or something like that. So if I'm in there early and I've got 4 influence, that's somewhat inviting to other players to either attack me and make sure I lose my 4-point chip and this becomes worthless, or to kind of piggyback on me. Yeah, they're getting 3 points and I'm getting 4, but that's only the difference of a point. So they can sort of expect me to keep that world alive and spend a lot of my energy keeping that in because I'm more committed to them, and they can sort of tailgate on that, and then they're going to go over and work on this other world. And then you can kind of bluff a little bit, and you've got the whole secret base. You can reveal the secret base, and meanwhile you're holding the big 10 card. You really need it now, and so you can surprise with that. Or maybe you've just got the 1 card down, and then you've got the 10 in your hand and stuff like that. So there's the hand management, kind of tinkering and manipulating with the card powers, plus this sort of loose agreement, loose alliance thing, which I really enjoy. And it does play a little bit more methodically compared to Colossal Arena. So to me, it's kind of a tie between them, but the sort of wonky end game that can happen with Colossal Arena sticks this one over in this camp. And I do really enjoy this game. I'm doing my top 100 now, and I kind of debated because I really like this style of game. I really enjoyed Colossal Arena, Cheaty Mages. What was the other one? Shinobi Clans, where you have this sort of, you're deducing and you're cooperating maybe with somebody. So there's sort of like this, hidden team aspect that kind of comes and goes, and shifting alliances and stuff like that, shifting teams in some ways. But this really has a nice thing. I wish that somebody would probably reinvestigate this game and bring it out and modernize it a little bit, and make sure that you keep the end game not funky like it was in Colossal Arena. The powers in Colossal Arena are a little bit more exciting than this one, but This one is, there's a little bit more of a long game too, so again, it kind of hits in that middle for me. So anyway, it's a game I recommend if you're looking for kind of an oddball game that you can play with 3 or more players, and this definitely will play like in a lunch hour and stuff. And you can really hose people. And I don't know if you looked at the subtitle of my review or not, but so we had an incident with it, but that really had nothing to do with the game necessarily. Just the game kind of brought a certain thing out that happened. I won't go into details, of course, but it was interesting and it was really funny to me, and somewhat less funny to the other players, but also funny after a little while once everybody kind of calmed down. But so yeah, so you can be real devious and jerky with this and really screw people over and you know, stuff. So, but most people won't have an outburst like we had. So anyway, that is the game. Definitely take a look at it and hunt it down. Like I said, it's pretty cheap to find. You can find it on the Board Game Geek marketplace and other random places like eBay and stuff, and it's not, you know, absurdly expensive. I think I picked mine up for, it was like 20 something with shipping, so it wasn't bad. You know, it's just a deck of cards and some chips, so I mean, you could argue that you could get a game like that nowadays for less than that, but to me it's worth the money. So anyway, thanks.